Greetings, I'm Dike Rostant. Welcome back to the TTT News. The Emancipation Support Committee of Trinidad and Tobago has a great deal to be proud of, and they are actually looking at 30 years of existence. We go in depth on some of those things with Executive Chair of the Emancipation Support Committee, Zakiya Uzoma-Wadada. Welcome, Mama Zakiya. How are you doing?
Oh, good. Thank you so much, Dike. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. So I want to say thank you and greetings to your audience at this time. Yes.
And the pleasure is always. I want to ask you though, answer the person who says, but Emancipation Support Committee, they only do stuff around Emancipation time. What do you tell them?
Well, one, they need to pay more attention and mind their business, because we are about our people's business, and that used to be the words of one of our directors who transitioned, Brother Tracy Wilson, and we have to learn to mind our business. Because Emancipation Support Committee works throughout the year, outside of the festival, and I mean, you would know, as soon as the festival is finished in African History Month, we're going to go on to do our National African History Quiz for secondary schools and our National Spoken Word competition for primary schools. We do capacity building workshops early in the year. We do our annual workshop for our micro entrepreneurs. The Emancipation Support Committee is a full development organization that operates under a number of program areas. They are community mobilization and development. We meet with communities once a month, and now we do so virtually. So we continue even in spite of the restrictions of the pandemic to engage our communities. We have a youth education and development program under which falls the quiz. And as part of the annual festival, we do cultural workshops for young people. Then we also have education and research. Again, the education of the children, the information that we would normally share with our community groups. We develop information based on what is happening around. We do so through our Facebook page, sharing of information, also as part of press releases, depending on what the issue is. And of course, our what you would call it, key process for sharing of information is the annual Commentary Memorial Lecture Series. And then we have our cultural program, and I suppose people would be very much aware of that because our promotion of culture within our communities and the exhibition of those as part of the festival is something that we do annually. All the different ways. I think the Pan-African Festival, TT, maybe the only festival in Trinidad and Tobago that exhibits almost every area of our culture. We have pan, we have rapso, we have dance, we have calypso, we have the pan, we have the whole gamut. And then of course we look at things like the stilt walking, which we do for our young people. So we do a full range of activities. We have the capoeira, the African martial arts. All of these things form part of the cultural activities of the festival. So we have a full range of programs that we implement throughout the year. But of course, our key and our flagship event is the festival. And the fact is that the festival begins in May when we launch, and during June and all during July, there are activities that build up to what happens in the village, which people are most aware of. And then, of course, the Cambulade, our street procession on Emancipation Day.
I like that you said, regardless of whether or not you're drinking water, because it's healthy for you, you need to mind your business as well.
Yes, indeed.
And you spoke about it a little bit, so I want to get right to it. And this, even before we start to speak about the festival, I want to underscore the fact that this is 30 years of service by the Emancipation Support Committee. And one, I want to know how does that make you feel, one? And two, the work that has been done before versus the pivots and the changes that you all have had to make during the pandemic? How do you see that as two major points in the way that you approach things, the way that you go about the business of the people? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So this year, indeed, we celebrate our 30th anniversary. And our theme is commemorating 30 years of transformation and resilience, because we think that those two words capture our experience over the past 30 years. The organization was established in 1992 for the purpose of protecting the celebration of emancipation in Trinidad and Tobago, because 1992 would have been the 500th anniversary of the coming of Columbus. And for some reason, we still felt that that was something to celebrate, both here and internationally. Because even though in 1985, the August 1st was established as Emancipation Day and a holiday in Trinidad and Tobago, people still looked at it as Discovery Day. So there was a battle, because remember that it was they had stopped celebrating it as Emancipation Day. It became Discovery Day to celebrate the coming of Columbus. So even though, as you said, it was declared Emancipation Day in 1985, people were still, there was still this battle for Africans in the society to have the day truly recognized as Emancipation Day, because those people who supported the Discovery Day celebration continued their celebration of Discovery Day. So when the 500th anniversary of the coming of Columbus became this international moment to be celebrated, it became very, very important for the organization to ensure that even though everybody was very excited about this 500 years, August 1st is Emancipation Day in Trinidad and Tobago. So that was the root of the formation of the organization. And of course, the celebration. And in those days, we had very few people, celebrating or even understanding the significance of the celebration.
And it seems as though the work that you all have done over this 30-year span, you're seeing this difference. And even the way that it feels as though it's not necessarily something that is cool or stylish to wear certain hairstyles or certain dress codes, but it's just, okay, well, you don't really think about it that much because this is who you are. And I think that is part of the transformation that we need to work through. So it's no longer is whether or not it's in style or it's out of style. This is me.
This is who we are. So we have learned to appreciate over the years, as I said, in 1996, we began to make it, we made a specific effort to make it a nationwide celebration by putting in place transportation to bring people from all over the country. So on Emancipation Day, we had this gathering of ourselves in pride, and we used to write to the groups, come on and let us express the pride and the royalty of ourselves, on that day. And that is what eventually happened. And so what would have happened in the minds of people is, one, this is an important day in our history, not just for Africans in the society, but for our country. Because shouldn't have been that enslavement was still part of our process of existence. It not only affected Africans in the society, it affects humanity. So the ending of enslavement is a celebration of our humanity, regardless of our race or ethnicity. So when we came out on Emancipation Day, we began to make people to feel proud of who they are. No longer were African clothes considered a costume, because people used to tell, but it was the way we dress, because when we dress like ourselves, our dignity shines, our beauty shines, because we are adorning ourselves in the way that we were culturally, known to adorn ourselves. And therefore, that physical transformation also manifests itself in a mental transformation. I'm now comfortable to say that I'm African. We had a challenge in this identification of ourselves. Oh no, we have Chinese, Indians, and in Trinidad, but we have Trinidadians, when it comes to ourselves, we were not proud or comfortable to identify ourselves as African. So that has happened. And interest in our history. So now when we talk about white supremacy and we see what has been happening, because people tend to think that the struggle for African liberation ended in 1838. No, that was the beginning of the emancipation process. Because once we had lost the chains, we also had a lot of trauma to deal with, a lot of self-repairing to deal with. We had to deal with becoming to know ourselves again after 400 years. People underestimate the length of time. 400 years of being enslaved really changes you and your understanding of who you are. So now that we are 184 in our 184th year of liberation, we have to understand it is a work in progress. And that transformation continues, and we have to continue to feed it. And therefore, the celebration of emancipation is such an important aspect of that because of its multifaceted, the way that we present it, because we give you education as well as entertainment and making you feel proud of yourself and your culture.
And in terms of that work, of that ongoing work of liberation, because yes, I quote, some artists, singers of songs, players of instruments have said, yes, there are no shackles on my feet, but at the same time, I'm not where I want to be. And let me make the plug for Indaba, which takes place on a Wednesday evening with Vanessa, Lillian, and Herbert. You really want to get an idea of what is there. And there's so much information that is now more accessible. And that leads back to part of the question that I was asking in terms of the use of digital landscapes to host conversations, to share information, because I remember you were saying you were getting some engagement from places that were surprising you, and you're also able to record these conversations in a manner that you may not have been as focused on in times gone by. So what is that from your perspective?
Yes, so the last 2 years has really helped us to propel ourselves into this virtual space, which is very, very good for the organization. And as you mentioned in Indaba, we are also now in the process of also transforming that into a program that is also available online. So that the amazing information, again, a part of it. And thank you so much for mentioning it, Dike, because I forgot to mention that as part of the ongoing education and research program. And the online experience. So over the last 2 years, we were determined, no, we must have a festival somehow. And we became the first organization actually challenged with that ambition of how do you now take your festival, because remember, this is March 2020. And when we had to now begin to shut down and to respond to the pandemic, and we were like, what are we going to do about our festival? And we want to thank the University of the West Indies in its support in helping us to understand how we can actually make use of the technology to stream our live events and so on, or stream things that are happening, get it online and so on. So we did that in 2020. So by 2021, we were total virtual. There was not a single physical, everything was totally virtual. And we appreciated that by being virtual, we are now able to engage with audiences in the Caribbean and the continent of Africa. We actually had a people-to-people forum as part of our African Union Diaspora event. And we were able to have over 100 participants from every area, Europe, United States, Africa, and so on. So the online experience has really given us a new vision with respect to the international engagement. The organization always had an international engagement through our annual trade symposium, through our interface with the African Union, through the fact that we are the Caribbean Pan-African Network, we are the Secretariat for the Caribbean Pan-African Network. But being online has strengthened that tremendously. And as we move on, we will continue, even as we begin to try to have physical events, all our events will also be streamed online. We will continue to engage that online audience. In fact, we have even trying to get a more strategic direction in how to better use the social media space and how to capture all of the different kinds of audiences that we would like to.
I guess you have a data set to work from, looking and seeing where you have people taking in shows and asking questions from. And so and as you have said, there's one thing to be said about looking at the data and using that data to influence what it is you're doing, and looking at Praxis and Sankofa. So this is stuff that is not foreign to you at all in terms of going back and getting it. And we are continuing this conversation with Zakiya Uzoma-Wadada, Executive Chair of the Emancipation Support Committee of Trinidad and Tobago, looking at the launch of the 2022 Pan-African Festival, TT, commemorating emancipation and observation of African liberation Day. And as you said, the theme is commemorating 30 years of transformation and resilience. Now, I see a doctor. There's a doctor going to be in the house, Dr. Kanem. We realize we've gone this way and we haven't necessarily spoken about the rundown of the festival itself. So in this last 4 minutes,
we have a lot to do.
Yes, we're focusing on the festival.
Okay, so at the launch, we will be sharing the details of the festival. When we first started to do the launch, it used to be a media event. It eventually grew into a social event. But now that we're coming back out, as I keep saying, the ashes of COVID, we are going to now have the event once again as a media event. We've invited the media and the local speakers, who would be our Honorable Minister, Randall Mitchell, who will be there to launch the event. We have the representative of the Ambassador of Nigeria and also the Ambassador of Venezuela, a good friend of the organization, here present, will be physically present. But we coming from online, we will have the Ambassador of Panama. She has been recently appointed to Trinidad and Tobago and very, very interested in Pan-African affairs. And then we have Dr. Natalia Kanem, who is this executive director of the United Nations Population Fund. But our interest in her is particularly because she's also a champion for the decade for people of African descent. So all of them will be bringing greetings. And at the event, we will also have our chairman doing reflections on the 30 years, Kafka Kabwan, our founding chairman, now our director for regional and Pan-African affairs. And he will do some reflection on those 30 years. And I will be presenting our forward, how we are going forward, the details of the year. The festival, I mean, you have to tune in to the launch to get all the details of what we are going to be presenting this year. But what I can tell you, you can expect all your usual things, fashion show, drum festival, activities in the village from the 29th to the 1st. But when you join us, for the launch, you will get the details of who is coming, what are we doing, who are we celebrating, Calypsonian are we celebrating this year. You'll be very pleased and surprised to see who it is. So what I want us to do is to join us on our Facebook page and on our YouTube page so that you can be live with us at 5:30 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, and we will get all the details of the festival for this year.
We have to break that down for me, because sometimes when you're looking for the Facebook page or the YouTube page, it may be, I'm not sure if it's ESCTT.
No, it's Emancipation.
What was the name of it?
Yes, Emancipation Support Committee -ESC. That is our Facebook page. I can also send the link. We have the link on our flyer. We can, we're going to be boosting this so people can see it. And then we have our YouTube, which is TT_ESC. So we do have the events lined up for you, and you will get a little bit more of it. On Wednesday to Dike, we're also going to remember the transition of one of our directors who transitioned last year. He was one of those that we lost as a result of the pandemic, but a former Soyinka, who was our media person, so we're going to do a small tribute to him again this year, because on the 27th will be his transition for 1 year,
And I really like the fact that you I like that term, that phrase from you, that turn of phrase, emerging from the ashes of COVID or the pandemic.
Yes.
And as people become a little more encouraged to move in slightly wider circles, this understandably observing health protocols and trying to stay as safe as possible. And do you see this festival being something that helps to unite brothers and sisters from the diaspora? So the same way people would say, okay, well, yes, I'm tuning in and I'm looking at some of these things virtually. They say, but I didn't realize it was all of this in Trinidad and Tobago. So let me actually physically try to touch the soil there.
Oh, definitely. That's why we call it a Pan-African festival, because again, it is for all of us. And we actually gone to the Tourism Trinidad Limited to have them to assist us in a campaign to tell people to come home for emancipation. So we have a Come Home for Emancipation campaign that we are going to be promoting, so that those people who really have not been home for a while, and even those who would consider, wherever there is a Pan-African event and a space of home, like Africa, you know, we want people to come. We know this year we do not know how many will actually come, but that's what we want to continue to encourage people. We have always encouraged and brought people home for emancipation. You know, we brought different guests, top artists, we have people from the business sector. We've always been doing that, and we want to continue to do so. So it is definitely an opportunity for us to engage, and of course, as I told you, we have a people-to-people forum, which this year we are calling it the Global Africa People-to-People Forum, so that we are going to be bringing people, albeit virtually, from different parts of the globe to discuss our affairs. And this will take place just before the governments are supposed to meet again. Remember last year they launched the African Union CARICOM Summit, and that happens in September. So we as civil society will have a chance to talk and hopefully raise some issues that can impact the discussions in September. So it is indeed intended to woo a global African community.
And I really appreciate the fact that, yes, 30 years, so there's an established product, there's a way of doing things, so it's not as though going to these agencies saying, okay, well, help us do what we do a little better, because no person is an island. But it's not as though, well, wait, now, where these people come from? Understand? And being able to have these boutique initiatives and projects that can lure one, just making those connections, and also bringing in foreign exchange is another thing. Because for my part, I don't see myself going to a festival where people just flinging tomato off each other. The way that I grew up, that is wasting food, whether or not you're making sun-dried tomato, whether or not you're making tomato choker, whether or not you're using that as an ingredient in peanut soup. And there's so many things with so much more flavors, pun intended, that are available in Trinidad and Tobago. So we really want to thank you for the work that you specifically and the Emancipation Support Committee is doing, Mama Zakiya. And on behalf of the entire news team, we want to thank you for tuning into this conversation in depth with me, Dike Rostant.